Welcome, Flyers fans. You're listening to Chris Mayer, Flyers Fan Mania 93 on YouTube.
Alright, what is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and today I am back with another video here. So today I am recording my player grades video for the 2021-22 season. Obviously, this is, I've talked about many times before, and as most of you know, this was one of the worst Flyer seasons of all time. And, there were a few positive things. If you want to talk about different players and things like that, I think there were a few positives towards the end of the year. But majority of it wasn't fun. And, there were a lot of losses, a lot of different things. And today I'm just going to be, looking at different players, breaking down different guys, and trying to kind of give those guys a certain grade on the season. And basically the way I'm doing this is I'm going off of what I saw from my own two eyeballs, not essentially like the expectation of the player coming into the season and then how they performed, up to that said expectation. I'm kind of just going off of their whole season in general. So starting with Konechny, down to Ewers and Wola. If you were to go on to hockey reference right now, that would be the scoring in the regular season from number 1 to 42. That's how many players the Flyers used this season, and that is including all three goaltenders: Carter Hart, Martin Jones, and Felix Sandstrom. That's in the total player order of this. So let's waste no more time and let's get started. So starting out with Travis Konechny, I thought Konechny overall had a pretty good year. Obviously he want to be better, but I thought he was decent at times. It looked like he was struggling to score. He really was missing the net for a lot of the season. He was pretty much average, for majority of the year. He ended the year with 52 points. He started to pick up some points in certain stretches, and later in the year, he was playing better. It felt like when he was on that line with Kevin Hayes, they were playing well. But, overall, probably not the best year for Konechny. Obviously, he gets up there into the 50-point range. Flyers only had two guys at 50 points this year, and that was Konechny and Atkinson, number 1 and 2 on the list. But, overall, I feel like Konechny could probably land at a C+. I thought there were some stretches where he played well. I thought there were stretches where he was kind of just snake bitten for majority of the year. I think it's one of the years where you expect to bounce back here next year from Konechny. And overall, I thought he played well for majority of the year. He just couldn't really score. It felt like he was more of a dangerous threat at times. Just obviously points weren't the biggest thing. Number 2 on the list is Atkinson. Atkinson ended the year with 23 goals. He was second on the team in goals for the year, behind JVR. So, overall, I thought Atkinson had a pretty solid season. I thought there were some things that I really liked that he did. He had some big goals early on in the year that kind of kept the team afloat. The overtime winner against Calgary, he had that shorthanded goal against Florida in the first month of the year. So he had some big moments. And he was always a guy that showed passion. He played pretty strong, and, for scoring 23 goals on a team that kind of struggled to score for majority of the year, I think that kind of says something about Cam as well. And he shows a lot of heart. He cares. You always see him, with the fans and talking about all that different stuff and just everything that he kind of does. He wants to be a Flyer. He resembles being a Flyer. I think overall, probably a B for Atkinson. I think just the way that, the character that he shows overall and things like that. Third on the list is Giroux. I don't necessarily think this really needs an explanation. Claude Giroux is an A. Last season as a Flyer, everything that led up to Giroux this season. I could sit here all day and talk about Giroux. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's just so crazy to me still to think that he's not a Flyer and that he's most likely not going to be re-signing here. I mean, listen, I don't know that for sure, but I just can't say it. But look, like, he had a pretty solid year. ending his year here. 57 games played, he put up 42 points here in his last year. Obviously, I know that doesn't mean much to him or anything like that, but I thought he had I mean, in the beginning of the year, he really was, you know, scoring goals. He pretty much was putting the team on his back at times, and he did it last year as well. Um, he had some moments last year where he had some big goals, and like even this year, I mean, he showed that much emotion in the home opener when he scored that goal. Like, there's not many times you see that from Giroux, and again, just everything that he's done over his career as a Flyer. And again, his 1,000th game here, being in attendance for that was that is the best Flyers game I've ever been to in my life. First of all, they won, which was great. The ceremony, I bawled my eyes out for a good 15 minutes straight because, again, like I've said it before, like this is the team I grew up on, like Giroux, Voracek, Couturier, like these are the guys I grew up on. So like it was very emotional for me. But again, overall, I thought Giroux had a great year, and he deserves nothing less but an A on my rankings for the end of the year. Um, Next on the list is JVR. Obviously, I think everybody knows how I feel about JVR at this point. Like, a lot of his goals towards the end of the year were essentially like meaningless. It felt like he was just scoring goals. He was scoring, but they weren't. The Flyers were already mathematically out. It didn't necessarily matter to them at the time. It's not like they were in a playoff push or anything like that. So he ends up leading the team with 24 goals at the end of the year. I mean, he literally had one goal, and it was like that goal that he scored against Dallas. It like deflected off like four different people in front of the net and rolled in. Um, that was like his only like goal for like a good month and a half to start the year. I mean, he struggled for majority of the year. He's just so streaky. And when you pay a guy $7 million and he barely puts up 25 to end the year, and for how bad the power play was, I can't see JVR getting. It's just everything that kind of went on with him. Again, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't see the Flyers keeping him next season. Whether if they buy him out or they trade him. But I think a C minus is probably fair for JVR. I mean, again, majority of his goals were pretty late, and things like that. Farabee, number 5 on the list. I thought Joel had some moments where he looked good. He struggled really a lot towards the end of the year. They tried to move him at center. It doesn't seem like he's going to be there. Long term, he's most likely going to be playing wing, and he said that during his exit interview. But I think it's just more of in a pinch, can they put him at center? And I thought he had some good games throughout the year. I thought there were times where he didn't look too great. Probably once a better season. He's put up 20 last year. He only had 17 goals, 17 assists this year, for 34 points in 63 games. So obviously, he definitely would want a better year for himself. But I think a C is probably fair for Farabee. And honestly, I kind of feel the same for Kevin Hayes because, Hayes, if you're gonna look at Hayes, who's sixth on the list for the team, excuse me, obviously battled injury for most of the year, came back, and he actually looked really good. I think that was the one thing because you didn't really see much of him, and I don't think he played well enough to give himself like a B or an A. But I just thought like overall with everything he kind of dealt with this year and everything that he kind of did throughout the season with dealing with the injuries, dealing with all that different stuff, I thought he really did play well after coming back from the injury the second time, where it was basically just he had to get fluid drained. It wasn't really like an infection or anything. It was just like the way it was described, it was kind of different. But I thought there were different areas that he played well. I thought again towards the end of the year, I thought he played well. So I feel like a C plus is kind of a good range for Hayes overall for the end of the year. Number 7's Ivan Provorov. Look, I kind of felt like everybody was kind of hard on Provorov for a majority of the year. I didn't think he played horrible. I thought he had a stretch of games where he didn't look great. Look, when the team is that bad, I think it's more of like everything's going to spiral on him because he plays the most out of most of the defense, literally all of the defensemen. He plays a lot of minutes. And not having Ellis and only basically playing with Matt Niskanen for his whole career, who was really the only partner that actually he looked good with. He played with Braun, he played with Gostisbehere, he played with McDonald, he played with so many different defensemen. I mean, this year he literally played a game with Nick Seeler. And that's something against Sealer that just kind of shows you how banged up the Flyers were at the same time. Um, I didn't really think Provorov had that bad of a year that everybody kind of thought. I will say though, I don't think he's happy. I don't think he wants to be a Flyer anymore. That's just kind of how I read the situation. Um, I think overall, I think Provorov is probably a C, honestly. Like, I don't think any of these guys in the top 10 are worthy of a D or an F. And that's, and, from connecting to Lindblom, that's 1 through 10 on this list. I really don't. Like, I think a lot of these rankings are going to be like C, because again, it's like, it all goes on how many games the player played and kind of what I thought at the same time. So it's like, I don't really think Provorov had much of a chance to do better. I thought he could have, I would have liked if he kind of took, just kind of owned up to the season and kind of said it was more on him because, I was listening last night to Elliot Friedman and he was kind of saying like, he kind of sees it as like he did everything he possibly could. And I see that, but I also think of it at the same time as like he never really was put in the position to that's kind of where I agree with it because he wasn't really put in the position to succeed to begin with because he was playing with so many different people throughout his career at the same time. But at the same time, he's been in the league for a long time now. He understands how to play. Like I think there were some games where he looked putrid, and I think there also were some games where he looked pretty good. So I feel like a C is pretty fair for Provorov. Going on to Sanheim, I think Sanheim is a B plus. After Mike Yeo came here, Sanheim was their best defenseman. I will literally argue that with I literally will argue that with anybody. He would join the rush. He set up goals. I mean, he ended the year a +9, like, and that's pretty hard to do on a team that was ended up fourth worst in the league for the entire year and gave up goals left and right. Struggled to score for majority of the year, right? So you get my point. I thought Sanheim was great, and I thought the evolution of him and the rest of the line and pairing, I thought that just evolved throughout the year. I thought they played better. I thought Sanheim was just fantastic. Like there was, again, it wasn't even just jumping in the play, but he would jump in the play, create a scoring chance. He'd be able to get back. The power play, it seems like an area he could be better in. Or the Flyers could at least give him a chance. I thought the games that they kind of gave him a chance, he didn't look great. But overall, I thought Sanheim had a great year. And again, since Yo came came in as head coach from December 6th on, I thought Sanheim was great. And overall, I think a B plus is perfect for Sanheim. Scott Lawton, honestly, I think Lawton is also in that same range as a B. I thought Lawton had a solid year. I mean, I thought there was a lot of different things that kind of went on throughout the year. I think he was one of them guys that showed leadership. He showed that he kind of helped them younger guys kind of to play, kind of showed them the ropes, kind of showing them how to play. I thought when he came back, it took him a couple games after that concussion he had. I thought it took him a couple games to kind of get going a little bit, but I thought towards the end of the year he started to play well again. I think he's honestly one of our better penalty killers as well. Obviously outside of Hayes and Atkinson, I think that's one area Lawton's very good at, as many people know. And overall, I just thought for majority of the year, I just thought Scott had a solid year. I mean, you're not going to expect many goals from him. I thought defensively he was pretty good, so I feel like B minus range is pretty good for Lawton because again, he was out a little bit of time. He only played 67 games for the year, so again, that's the other thing too is the injuries and all that stuff. But I feel like even before that, I thought he was playing some pretty good hockey. It felt like he was one of the bright spots of this team for majority of the year as well. Lindblom, I, Oscar is very. It's such a weird thing with Oscar because it really reminds me of Gossesbear from 2 years ago with Elaine Vigneault. I feel like Lindblom is kind of a C as well because look, Lindblom for majority of the year he and not even just this year, like the past 2 seasons Lindblom hasn't necessarily been given a chance to show what he can do. And like I felt like early on in the year he actually started to play like that Lindblom in the beginning of the 2019-20 season when he led the team in goals. Um, he actually was winning puck battles. He was doing the things that the old Oscar Lindblom was doing before the cancer diagnosis, and it felt like at that point, like he even said it himself in the exit interviews. He just started to play more, and once he started to play more, again, he was winning puck battles. He was doing the good things offensively, and it just felt like overall he was playing with confidence. He was playing like himself, and then he was put on the fourth line, and he pretty much played the fourth line for a majority of the year. Like that's kind of where I feel like I can't really give him a bad rating or a good rating. I just feel like a middle rating is fine because he was never really given the chance to show what he could do this year. And he ends the year with 12 goals and 14 assists. Um, I thought there were moments where he looked good. I thought there were moments he looked good, and there were moments where really he wasn't really given a chance to show what he could do. So that's kind of where I feel like a middle rating is fine because, you know, I'd like to expect more from him, but when you're playing the fourth line and when you're with Thompson and McEwen are not really known offensively and you're also not really getting much ice time, I can't really, expect him to really do more offensively. Keith Yandel, I think it's pretty safe to say Yandel's a D on the year. Like, and I guess, and I'm sure people would even argue that he's an F. Um, Yandel was bad. Like he was, I've never seen a defenseman just struggle to get a puck out of their zone as much as Yandel. And like, I'm sorry, like he just did not play well here. And I understand like the streak and everything is fantastic, but I'm going off of play with these. Like he's a good passer. I will say that he's a good stretch passer, but majority of the time those passes were turnovers. They were to the other team. Like he did have some nice passes early on in the season where the Flyers scored a couple goals. Lawton actually scored a goal against Boston earlier in the season where Yandel literally fired it off the end wall and it went right out and it was just a tap in, and it was beautiful. Like there's plays like that. I didn't really think he was great on the power play. Obviously, the power play struggled majority of the year. I don't think Yandel helped that in any sort of area. Again, I just thought his play. I mean, the end of the year minus 47. He only scored one goal. He had 18 assists, and that's most likely majority of them are power play assists. So like, you know, I just don't really think he just did not play well here. I mean that's just the main thing. Couturier, Coots, I feel like overall is probably a save because again I tweeted this out earlier. In the games that Couturier played this year, he played 29 games and majority of them. And I'm gonna go find the tweet because earlier today, Bill Meltzer had a tweet out for like the most frequently used line combinations in 21-22, which was by Money Puck. And the best Flyers line which was their best expected goals percentage of 52.7 was the Couturier Giroux connecting line in the beginning of the year. And that was either Giroux in the middle or Coots in the middle. They kind of switched it up, but that line that line in the beginning of the season, Giroux had goals against Vancouver, Seattle, Florida, Edmonton, Arizona. Coots had goals against Boston, Edmonton, Vancouver, Arizona, and Washington. Konechny had goals against Vancouver, Seattle, Boston, and Pittsburgh. And that was 14 of the team's 32 goals from October 15th to November 4th, which was against Vancouver to Pittsburgh, that stretch of games. And after potting those 5 goals against Edmonton in that big game that they had in the beginning of the year, they won 5-3. They didn't score 4 more goals until December 6th after that. So Couturier and Giroux and Konechny kind of contributed to majority of their offense in the beginning of the season. I thought Coots was playing good for majority of the year. Again, they were scoring offensively. It felt like that was kind of the thing, but it felt like Coots was playing hurt, and I just feel like a middle rating is perfect for Couturier. Derek Brassard, I actually really like Brassard here. I feel like he was one of them guys that obviously he was banged up consistently throughout the year, but I like the way he played. He played with energy. He played with pace. He was one of the leaders on the team and felt like he definitely had a voice. Um, and he's been around the league a long time. And for how much he made, he only made I believe it was 800,000 was his contract um, for the year. But again, I just thought overall, I thought Broussard had a pretty solid season. So I feel like Broussard at the least could probably get a B minus. Again, for the games he played, for the he had a couple big goals in the beginning of the year. He had some moments where he looked pretty good, and in the beginning of the year there was that second line with him, Atkinson, and Lindblom. It wasn't necessarily scoring, but it had some moments, and it kind of fell off a little bit, and then he was kind of hurt and bounced back. But I felt like after being injured, and obviously he was traded at the deadline, but I thought Broussard had a pretty good season here, and I thought he had some pretty good games. Again, I just think everything with the injuries and things like that, it was just tough. Braun, I definitely think Braun was a B. I think in the last 2 years, I thought Braun was really good here. He played more minutes than he should have. Um, he was actually one of the better defensemen for majority of this year. He ended the year +3 here in 34 games. And, it kind of felt like that Braun played pretty well for majority of the year. I mean, again, from playing first pair and being with Provorov, I thought that pair even last year was good for what it was worth. And I kind of felt the same this year. There wasn't really much you could kind of look at with the defense because everything was just so different all the time. But I thought Braun had a pretty solid year. Frost, I definitely think Frost is a B plus. I thought Frost had some really solid games throughout the end of the year. I thought he ended his season really well. There were games where Frost looked really good. There were games where you couldn't really notice him too much. But again, I thought towards the end of the year when he played with Cates and Tippett, he was fantastic. He had some really solid games. And overall, I really liked Frost's season. This is a huge off season for him. I'll say that. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Huge off season for him. And if he can kind of build off of this year and use that to his advantage, I thought that line was really good towards the end of the year. And again, like I just really enjoyed his play, and I thought he wasn't really getting much of a chance before that because again he was kind of moved up and down. He got sent down to the AHL. They basically were having him with Willman and Mayhew, who Willman was sent down to the AHL, and then Mayhew was claimed off waivers by Anaheim. So that kind of shows you the variation of those two players and where they could end up in their career. Most likely two career AHLers in Willman and Mayhew. And again, I do like both of those guys. There's nothing against them. That was just how I kind of saw their play. I don't really think it elevated Frost that much. But again, when he was put with legit NHL guys, and he kind of played that in guys in like Tippett towards the end of the year when it was kind of the younger group, Tippett and Cates, Noah Cates. I thought he was fantastic. Ristolainen, I feel like Risto could be a C plus. I thought there were some games where Risto looked good, some games where he didn't look too great. Obviously, he was injured towards the end of the year, but I feel like he really helped Sanheim. I do. I like the physical element of him. And again, I just think overall, I thought he had a pretty average season. Obviously everything was so tough this year, but I think a C plus C for Ristolainen is fine just because of the way that everything kind of went this year overall. And again, I thought he really elevated Sanheim and how Sanheim played towards the end of the year as well. Cam York, I feel like York could honestly be a B minus. I thought York had some pretty good games. I thought he had some good moments. He scored a couple goals. He had 3 goals on the year. Overall, I feel like he only played 30 games, but I thought York had some good moments. He was able to play first pair with Provorov for a little bit. They used him on the power play. I thought he looked pretty good in that area. So I feel like a B minus is pretty fine for the amount of games he played. I didn't think he was put in I honestly didn't really think he was in a position where he struggled. I thought he honestly played well. He was out there with Yandel for a little bit, and that pairing kind of did get exposed a little bit at times. But I thought York held his own, and I do think he is an NHL player. So I think a B minus is pretty fair for York. No Cates, honestly, I could seriously put Cates at a B plus. Like he was great for a lot, for like majority of the year when he was here. He was very good defensively, very good on that line with Frost and Tippett. I just overall I really liked his season. I really like the way he played. Just defensively, he seems like he's in the right spot. He scored a couple goals going to the greasy areas in front of the net. He had a couple tip goals. He had a 2-goal game in the Flyers' actual last win of the season. Um, Overall, I thought he was really good, and I thought he was very good on the PK. I do think he's an NHL player, and I do think he'll make the team out of camp. He's one of the guys I do think can make it next year. Um, Patrick Brown, I think Brown is definitely a C plus. I thought Brown had some really good games. I thought coming back from injury, he was pretty good. Um, you know, I just feel like overall throughout the year, I think the Flyers really did find 2/3 of that fourth line. I feel like you honestly could throw McEwen a little bit higher at a B because I thought McEwen, he showed grit, he showed heart. He just worked his ass off, and it was constant. And I'm not that's nothing against any of the other players, but like McEwen literally would drive like full speed one end on a forecheck, finish his check. Like he had some big fights, he had some big moments. He got the crowd pumped up. Like he likes to be a Flyer. He is able to feed off the fans' energy and get the crowd pumped up, and I think that's huge. And it seems like everybody kind of compliments the way that he played. His teammates like him, and things like that overall too. So again, I thought McEwen had some really solid games. Tippett, I think you honestly could throw him in that kind of B minus range. Um, I thought Tippett had some games where he looked really good. He was a little streaky. I thought when he first came here, he had a couple really good games. He's got that shooting mentality. I think a shooting coach is huge for him this offseason. I think if you're able to get him with a guy that can really help him, just get his shot down and just be able to work on that throughout the summer. I think that'll be huge for him. I thought he had some really solid games. Again on that line with Frost and Cates, so I feel like a B minus B is pretty good for Tippett. Mayhew, I feel like Mayhew could be thrown in the C minus range. Um, I think Mayhew overall, he had some games where he looked good. He had some games where he didn't look great. Um, I just feel like overall it was he was hot at the right time. Anyway, he was playing well. He had that one really good game against Washington back on February 17th. But again, I thought there were games where again he looked good. He was just very streaky. So I feel like a C minus is pretty fair. Um, Willman, honestly, I kind of feel like a D minus. I just thought Willman had some solid games. He had a couple goals. Um, I just feel like overall it was kind of. I just didn't really notice him most nights. It felt like when he was up here, he had some solid games together. But overall, again, and I love the story, and I really like Max as a player and as a person. I think he's a good dude, and um, I feel like overall he had some real solid games. But it's also at the same time, like I didn't necessarily notice him most nights. But again, like I think the story for him is great coming from the ECHL, the Phantoms last year where he had a really solid year, and being able to play this year, I thought that was great for him, and I think it's awesome. But overall, I just didn't necessarily really notice him that much. Ellis, again, going off of the 4 games, I feel like Ellis, you honestly could throw. Honestly, I feel like you could probably throw him in the middle, um, probably right at a C. Like I don't necessarily think he played much to where you can put him any higher or any lower. Um, he did have 5 points in those 4 games. And if you're going off the 3 games that he played in the beginning of the year, I thought it looked really good with Provorov. Power play, I thought the power play looked actually really good when Ellis was quarterbacking it, or at least out there with on it. Um, I feel like for most of the year, it was pretty good. And I just feel like there were different things with Ellis that when he was out there on the power play looked good. Obviously, for majority of the year, it struggled, but when Ellis was out there, and when the team, I mean, like honestly, I kind of feel like majority of the year when Ellis was playing, or excuse me, when Ellis wasn't playing, the defense was kind of out of sync. There wasn't really much because they were the the defense was so switched up all the time. There was nothing really that you could gain off of it. And I just find it felt like in the 4 games he played, he had some solid moments. Um, it felt like majority of the year he was making the the right plays where if he got the puck out of the zone, it didn't take him too long. It just felt like he had some pretty good chemistry with Provorov in the 3 games that we saw in the beginning of the year, and then that 1 game in Dallas in November. But that was really it. Like, you didn't see Ellis after that, so it was like, I just feel like overall he's too high up. He didn't play enough to be too high or too low. Ronnie Attard, who ended the year with 15 games. I feel like Attard could be a C. Honestly, I thought I felt like overall Attard had some solid games. I think it's very clear that he needs more time and he's going to have to be in the AHL. But I will say, I thought he played well, and I thought he really was kind of in his own kind of shell towards the end of the year. Like he played better, and he felt like he was more comfortable throughout the season. Towards the end of the year when he ended up finishing, because again in those first couple games he didn't look great. He kind of got exposed a little bit, but I felt like as the games went on, he got more comfortable. I just thought overall he had a pretty solid end to his year. Um, Isaac Ratcliffe, Ratcliffe, if you remember, I feel like he played. You know, I honestly felt like Ratcliffe had some pretty good games. He had some games where he looked good on the forecheck. He really was only playing fourth line for the most part, but I thought he used his size to his advantage. He did have 1 goal. He did score his first NHL goal. I mean, he only played 10 games. He had 4 points in those 10 games, but I felt like overall, I thought he had some solid games. I thought he looked okay. I feel like a C minus is probably fine for Ratcliffe. Bobby Brink, I kind of feel the same. I thought he had some good games. I thought he had some moments where he definitely showed like he could. He definitely needs more time. Connaughton, I kind of feel like a D is pretty fair for Connaughton. I just didn't really, I thought he had some okay moments. I thought he played okay. I mean, he's one of the veteran guys. Picked him up off waivers for some size. I didn't really notice him too much. I didn't think he played great. Hayden Hodgson, I think you could throw it into that scenario as well. I thought Hodgson, outside of his debut, I didn't really notice him too much. I mean, he ended up scoring in his first game, but in the 6 games he played, I didn't really notice him that well. Sealer, I think you could throw it into a C minus. I thought Sealer had some okay games, some games where he didn't look great, but overall, I think that's a pretty fair rating. Thompson, I feel like Thompson towards the beginning of the year was okay. Obviously, he was injured, missed close to 50 games, and then came back. I feel like Thompson, you probably could throw into the C plus range. He didn't play that much, but overall, I thought there were some areas where he looked pretty good. Obviously, he's always good in the face-off circle, but overall, he's kind of brings that veteran presence. I thought the fourth line towards the end of the year looked pretty good with Brown, or excuse me, not Brown, McEwen and Lindblom on his left and right. But overall, I thought Thompson towards the end of the year, I thought he looked better coming off of the injury, and he wasn't necessarily really supposed to come back. After he got that shoulder surgery as well, so I thought that was good that he was at least able to come back. I don't know if he'll re-sign here. I honestly wouldn't mind it, but I just don't see it. Linus Hogberg, honestly, I feel like Hogberg you could throw into the B range. I thought Hogberg had some really solid games, and he only played 5 games, but Hogberg was great. Like, he made some really good defensive plays. He was just always in position. He was pretty good on the penalty kill. He's got a good stick. Like, he played really well. Um, in the in those games that I saw him for Montreal towards the end of the year, um, he looked good. I mean, in his debut against Montreal, he was a little iffy at times. He's kind of out of position a little bit, but after that, like, I thought he was great, and I thought he made some really solid plays. Just getting the puck out of the zone, whether it was a defensive play that started a breakout or whatever. He just made those like little plays that kind of get overlooked when you're kind of watching the game like that. I just thought overall, I thought he played really well. Jackson Cates, I feel like you probably could throw into the D range. Um, I just didn't really notice him too much. He did score his first goal um, of his NHL career this year, but I didn't really notice him too much. I thought he was okay, but I just didn't really notice him. Alway Kubel, I think you could throw into that same range. It was kind of the similar things from last year. The penalties. Um, I thought he was all right. I mean, obviously he got picked up off waivers by Colorado, but I thought NK was okay for most of the year. Carter Hart, I think Hart's an A. I do like Hart. If honestly, like it's funny because I've seen this a lot. Like Hart's not a he's not a you know the like people are kind of sold on him or they don't necessarily think he's like that number one guy or whatever. Carhart has been one of the only positives well, honestly, last year he didn't look too great, but this year he was one of the few positives, and I thought for most of the games, like he was good. Like he didn't have any like bad games or I mean he had some games where he kept the Flyers in it. He had some big games early on in the year where he was making saves and he had a couple big wins this year. The 2-1 win in Carolina, the 4-3 win on the road against Vegas, the 2-1 win at home against Vegas. I mean, he had some games where he looked really good, and he's not a guy that I think is an issue. I don't, and that's one reason why I think this rebuild retool could kind of be quicker because you have a goaltender now. But again, I thought Hart was really good for majority of the year. Wade Allison played one game and was injured, so I feel like a D is pretty fair for Allison. He just has to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. Bunneman, I don't know. I didn't really notice Bunneman that much. I feel like a D is pretty fair. Honestly, I don't think anybody's going to be an F on this list. Um, I just don't think anybody was that bad to be an F because the entire team was bad. Martin Jones, I feel like you could throw Jones into the B range or B minus range. Honestly, I thought he had some games where he looked okay. I thought he had some games where he struggled a little bit, but I thought overall with everything that was in front of him, I thought Jones had a pretty solid year. Tanner Legzinski, he only played one game as well, so I feel like a D is pretty fair. Sandine, same thing. Didn't really notice him too much in that one game. Sandstrom, honestly, I feel like a B is pretty solid. And it's crazy. You might be thinking the team struggled so much, and I have all three goaltenders in the B and the A range. But again, I don't necessarily think the problem was goaltending this year. I think it was more just structure and team D, which was a problem last year. And also just not scoring goals was one of the biggest problems this year. But Sandstrom I thought was really good. Like I thought there were games where he was solid. I thought there were games where he was iffy, or not necessarily like iffy, but it kind of just felt like there were some games where he wasn't really given much of the chance to win. And it can maybe make the goaltender look a little bad, but I don't necessarily think so because of the record. I kind of thought Sandstrom was thrown into a position where he wasn't really able to succeed. Again, I don't think the team played great in front of him when he was in that. He had one bad game against Winnipeg, but that was it. I kind of just thought overall, I thought in the few games, I thought he was pretty good. And Zamola, I think you could throw Zamola into the C range as well. I thought Zamola had some solid games. I thought he looked pretty good. But overall, yeah, that's it. The 2020, 2021-22 player rankings for the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, look, if you disagree, let me know down below in the comments. Again, I love talking about this stuff, so let me know what you guys think. I think this is pretty fair for the year. And again, going off games played and how that player handled everything throughout the year, I think this is a pretty fair list. So let me know your guys' thoughts below. Remember, guys, check out Garrett Construction and SeatGeek. Thank you guys for watching, and I will talk to you all again soon.